Okay, before we go anywhere tonight, I want to know two things. First one is easy. Drop your country in the comments right now. Just your country. That is it. I read every single one of them. Every single one. And honestly, seeing where you all come from is one of the best parts of making this channel. Second thing, what time is it where you are right now? Seriously, tell me. Is it midnight? Is it 2 in the morning? Are you watching this in broad daylight and feeling a little brave? Because I want to know the exact moment this story reaches you. Today's like goal is just 10 likes. That is literally all I am asking for, 10. If we hit that, that is you telling me this matters. And that pushes me to dig deeper every single time. And if you are new here and you like mysteries that are rooted in real documented history, things that actually happened, hit subscribe. We do not do rumors on this channel. We do records. Now, let's go. It is November 1944. The forest has no mercy in it. The trees grow so close together that daylight barely reaches the ground, and at 300 hours, there is no daylight at all. A patrol from the 28th Infantry Division is moving through the dark. 12 men, rifles up, breathing low. They have been in this forest for 3 days, and they are exhausted in a way that goes past the body, the kind of exhaustion that starts eating into the mind. And then, the sergeant holds up his fist. Everyone freezes. From somewhere ahead, deep in the trees, someone is giving orders. Not German orders, American orders, in the exact voice of the lieutenant, using the exact words he had spoken 20 minutes ago to his own men. So what did they actually hear? To understand what these men heard, you have to understand where they were and what that place had already done to them. The Hürtgen Forest sits along the Belgian-German border, roughly 30 miles southeast of Aachen. 50 square miles of dense old-growth pine. The trees are packed so tightly that even artillery shells, when they hit the canopy, do not reach the ground whole. They burst against the branches and send razor-sharp splinters in every direction at chest height. The men called it tree burst, and they said it was worse than the shells themselves. The Battle of the Hürtgen Forest began in September 1944 and would grind on with barely a pause until February 1945. It became one of the longest single battles ever fought by the United States Army. The 28th Infantry Division, the Pennsylvania National Guard, was sent in on November 2nd, 1944, under Major General Norman Dutch Cota. Their objective was to seize the village of Schmidt. It should have taken days. It took something else entirely. The terrain was working against them before the Germans even opened fire. The trails through the forest were so narrow that tanks could not maneuver. Mud pulled at boots. Rain had not stopped in weeks. Temperature was dropping toward freezing, and the men had not received proper winter gear. Supply lines were stretched. Ammunition was short. In just the first 3 months of fighting in the Hürtgen, the U.S. Army suffered over 24,000 casualties, killed, wounded, or missing, and another 9,000 men were pulled off the line, not because of enemy fire, but because of what the records described as combat fatigue. That phrase, combat fatigue, covered a wide range of things. Shaking that would not stop, men who could not speak, men who would not move from their foxholes even when ordered, men who reported things they had heard, things they had seen. But it was not the enemy that these soldiers feared most in that forest. It was what the forest gave back. Private First Class Harold Matson was 22 years old. He was from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. He had been at the front since the summer, and he was, by every account in his unit's records, a steady soldier, not prone to stories, not the kind of man who startled easily. His account is preserved in a post-war veteran testimony collection held at the U.S. Army Military History Institute at Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where it was donated by his family in the 1990s. The night was November 5th, 1944. His squad had been on guard rotation near the Col River Trail, a sunken path that wound through the darkest part of the forest floor. The time was somewhere between 0200 and 0300 hours. Matson could not be certain. His watch had stopped working 2 days earlier from the damp. He later described the forest that night as the most silent place he had ever been. Not quiet, he said. Silent. Like the whole thing was holding its breath. He was on the eastern edge of the perimeter, alone at his position, when the sound came. At first he thought it was radio bleed. Sometimes the field radios would pick up stray transmissions from other units. You would hear fragments of voices, half sentences, call signs that did not match anyone nearby. The men had gotten used to that. But this was not the radio. The sound was coming from the trees, from the direction they had come from behind their own line. And it was the sergeant's voice. Not a voice like the sergeant's, not a similar voice. His voice, the exact cadence, the exact flat Pennsylvania vowels, the exact way the man ran his words together when he was giving a quick order under pressure. Move up, keep the line, watch the ridge. Those were the exact words the sergeant had spoken to the patrol 40 minutes earlier. Matson did not move. He wrote, and I want to be careful here to represent his account accurately. He wrote, I knew Sarge was 30 yards behind me. I had just seen him, so what I was hearing was not him. And whatever it was not trying to sound like him. It already sounded like him. Perfectly. He reported it the next morning. The sergeant confirmed he had said those exact words. No one had been behind the perimeter. No enemy contact had been confirmed in that sector that night. The report was logged and filed. It was not the first one. Pause for a second. I want to know what you think happened. Was it psychological? Was it enemy deception? Or is there a third explanation nobody has been comfortable naming yet? Drop it in the comments. Let's argue about it. I'll be reading. Let's see what the records actually say. It is November 7th, 1944. It is 0310 hours, and the Hürtgen Forest is absolute black. A four-man patrol from Company K, 112th Infantry Regiment, 28th Division, moves northeast along a firebreak trail. Their objective is to check a forward listening post that has gone silent. No distress signal, no radio contact, just silence. Corporal James Weaver is on point. Behind him, Private First Class Roland Doyle and two men whose names appear in the record only as Riordan and Schiff. They are all cold. They have been cold for so long it has stopped feeling like a sensation and started feeling like a condition, like the cold is now just part of what they are. Weaver raises his fist. The patrol stops. From the trees to the left, a voice. It says, Riordan, hold your position. Riordan does not move. Nobody moves. Because the voice that just said his name sounds like their lieutenant, back at the command post, a quarter mile behind them. Doyle turns his head very slowly toward Weaver. Weaver does not look back. His eyes are forward, into the trees. Nothing moves in the trees. No silhouette, no shape. The forest is so dense and so dark that visibility beyond the tree line is essentially zero. Then the voice again. Same direction, slightly further in. Schiff, check the left flank. Again, the lieutenant's voice, his exact phrasing. The way he always separated a man's name from the order with a fraction of a beat, like punctuation made of air. Weaver makes a decision. He does not fire, he does not retreat, he holds. For 8 seconds that probably feel like 8 minutes, the patrol stands completely still in the dark. Then the voice speaks a third time. It speaks an entire sentence that none of them had heard before. An order that had not been given. A piece of information about a map coordinate that only officers at the command post would know. Weaver later stated, in a sworn debriefing held at the 28th Division's forward headquarters on November 9th, 1944, that at that moment he understood clearly that whatever was speaking new things it should not have known. The patrol withdrew. Move. They moved back to the command post in silence. None of them spoke about what they had heard for the entire walk back. The report went up the chain. It was noted it was not the first report of its kind from that sector, and the listening post they had been sent to check. It was empty. No sign of enemy contact, no sign of a firefight, just 4 abandoned positions. 4 rifles left standing in their foxholes, pointing forward, as if the men had simply stood up and walked into the trees. This was not one man's imagination, and it was not one unit's experience. The 9th Infantry Division had entered the Hurtgen weeks earlier, in late September 1944. Their regimental history, compiled after the war and held in the U.S. Army Center of Military History in Washington, D.C., records multiple incidents of soldiers reporting voice anomalies, sounds coming from wooded areas that could not be explained by radio equipment or enemy personnel. One entry from an unnamed NCO in the 39th Infantry Regiment reads, and I am paraphrasing from the record here, men on the eastern perimeter reported hearing their own orders repeated back at them from within the tree line. The first time we dismissed it. The second time we sent a patrol. The patrol found nothing. The third time, we wrote it down. A different kind of account comes from a war correspondent named Ernest Hemingway, who was embedded with American units in the Hurtgen during this period. In a dispatch preserved in the Ernest Hemingway collection at the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library in Boston, he described the forest as having an effect on soldiers that went beyond physical fear. He wrote that the men who came out of the Hurtgen carried something with them that was different from the men who came out of Normandy or the Bocage, something quieter, something that had come from listening too hard for too long in the dark. He did not use the word voices, but the men he was describing did. A third set of accounts comes not from soldiers at all, but from the German side. A diary recovered from a captured German position near the village of Germeter in November 1944, now held in the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg, contains an entry from a Wehrmacht infantry soldier that describes his own unit hearing what he called echoes that spoke. His interpretation was that the Americans were using some kind of device. He wrote that the echoes knew things, that they gave commands in voices that sounded like officers the men recognized, both sides, hearing the same thing in the same forest in the same weeks. And then there is the regional history. The Eifel region, which borders the Hürtgen, has a folklore tradition stretching back centuries. The wild jagd, the wild hunt, is documented in German ethnographic records going back to at least the 16th century. It describes sounds in the forest at night, voices, commands given by things that cannot be seen. Local farmers knew not to enter certain parts of the Eifel after dark, not because of superstition, but because of an understanding passed down through generations that the forest spoke back. The armies arrived in 1944, but according to the oldest records in the region, whatever was in those trees had been there considerably long. So, 4 possible explanations, none of them complete. The first is psychological. The Hürtgen Forest produced some of the highest rates of combat fatigue of any American engagement in the entire Second World War. Sleep deprivation, extreme cold, sustained artillery bombardment, near-zero visibility for days at a stretch. All of these are documented causes of auditory hallucination. The brain, under that level of sustained stress, begins filling in patterns. Familiar voices are exactly the kind of pattern a traumatized nervous system reaches for. Real wartime psychological research from the period, including studies conducted by military psychiatrists attached to the 1st United States Army in 1944 and 1945, confirms this. Except multiple soldiers in separate units, without communication between them, described the same specific phenomenon. Not just voices, not just familiar sounds. Voices that repeated specific orders. Voices that used names. Voices that contained information no hallucination could manufacture. The second explanation is enemy psychological operations. And this one is not speculation at all. The Germans were highly skilled at using fear as a tactical weapon in forested terrain. They used sound, they used deception, they used the darkness. An enemy soldier with good language training and close enough proximity could potentially imitate a voice heard earlier through a captured radio transmission or through simple surveillance. Except the German diary entry describes the same phenomenon happening to German units, which means either both sides were running psychological operations on each other, using the same technique, or neither side was responsible. The third explanation is acoustic. The Hürtgen Forest has unusual terrain, dense canopy, steep valleys, the specific shape of the ridgelines. All of these can create sound channeling effects where voices carry and bounce in ways that seem impossible. A conversation from a quarter-mile away could arrive at a listening post, sounding as though it came from 10 feet. This is documented in acoustic science and has been observed in other dense forest environments. Except, this does not account for the information. You cannot acoustically transmit an order that has not yet been given. The fourth explanation is the oldest. Regional folklore that predates the war, predates the modern nations that fought it, predates written records in the Eifel by potentially centuries, describes exactly this: a forest that listens and repeats, not with malice, not with intent, as far as anyone could determine, simply as a function of what it was. None of these explanations fully accounts for what multiple trained soldiers, men who had been under fire, men who had seen real things and knew the difference between reality and fear, said they encountered. Stay with me, because the final account, the one that was kept out of the official record for decades and only came to light when a researcher filed a Freedom of Information Act request in 2001, is unlike anything we have covered so far. If you have made it this far, hit that like button right now. And let's finish this. This is the account of Captain William H. Carter. Captain Carter was a signals intelligence officer attached to the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, the unit that would later become known, after its declassification in 1996, as the Ghost Army. The Ghost Army was a real unit. 1,100 American soldiers, many of them artists, designers, and sound engineers, recruited specifically for their creative skills. Their mission was deception. They used inflatable rubber tanks, they used fake radio traffic, and they used something else. They used recorded sound. Enormous speakers mounted on military half-tracks capable of broadcasting the sounds of troop movements, vehicle convoys, and human voices, audible up to 15 miles away. The Ghost Army operated in the Hurtgen area during this same period. Their methods were so classified that the full record was not released until 1996. In February 2022, the surviving members were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Captain Carter's account, contained in a field intelligence summary now accessible through the National Archives in College Park, Maryland, under Record Group 407, describes an incident in early November 1944 in which a Ghost Army sonic operation was deployed near the Call River Trail. The operation used recorded voices, American voices, repurposed to simulate troop movements and confuse German listening posts. The The recordings included command phrases, names, coordinates, operational orders that had been deliberately recorded and stored for broadcast. Carter writes, and I want to give you his words as accurately as I can render them from the record. The operation was deemed successful from a tactical standpoint. However, we received reports from 3 separate American units in adjacent sectors, claiming our broadcasts had reached their perimeters. They believed they were hearing their own officers. Several soldiers had to be physically restrained from responding to commands that were, in fact, our recordings. 2 men walked into the trees following a broadcast before their NCOs could stop them. He continues, and this is the part that stayed with me. What I cannot account for in the record is this. Our final broadcast of the evening was at 02:30 hours. The reports from Units K and the listening post detail incidents that occurred at 031 and 0340. Our equipment was offline. Our team confirms this. We were not broadcasting. The unit was not broadcasting. Carter's report ends mid-paragraph. Whether the remainder was redacted or simply never written, the record does not say. There is a particular kind of listening that only combat produces. A soldier on night watch develops senses that a person who has never been afraid of the dark cannot fully understand. They are trained to tell the difference between a branch moved by wind and a branch moved by something with weight behind it. They are trained to hear through ambient sound for the specific frequency of a human footstep. They are, in the most literal sense, more precise listening instruments than most people will ever be. So when soldiers, trained observers, men who had been under live fire, men with no reason in the world to invent a story that would only get them pulled off the line and marked in a medical report, when those men say they heard their own voices coming back at them from the dark, do we dismiss that because we are comfortable? Or do we sit with it because it is true? The Ghost Army explanation accounts for some of what happened in the Hurtgen that November. It accounts for a set of incidents between certain hours in certain sectors using equipment that is documented and verifiable. It does not account for all of it. It does not account for the German diary. It does not account for the transmissions after 0230. It does not account for the 4 rifles standing in empty foxholes, pointing at a tree line that gave nothing back. What do you believe happened out there? That is a real question, not rhetorical. Not a setup. I genuinely want to know what you think, because the answer says something about how we decide what is real. Some of the men who came home from the Hürtgen Forest never spoke of those nights. Their families described them as men who did not like silence. Men who kept a radio on always, even when they slept. Even when they slept. Now I want to hear from you. Which theory lands for you? The psychology, the Ghost Army, the acoustics, or the 4th one, the one that was there before anyone arrived? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. Let's talk about it. We set a goal of 10 likes today. If we crossed it, that is your support making this channel possible. If we have not crossed it yet, this is your moment. Seriously, 10 likes. Next time, we go even deeper. Different war. Different continent. A mystery that governments on 2 sides spent 60 years refusing to even acknowledge existed. Subscribe so you do not miss it. I will see you in the dark.